Welcome back, everyone, to Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147, New York City Building and Code Consultants. I have Tim DeMaio of Vibra Analysis, Executive Vice President. Tim, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Sisto. Glad that we could finally make this happen.
Absolutely. So Tim and I met on many projects throughout New York City, and we had lunch together. And I was like, hey, Tim, I think you got a lot to offer to the show. A big part of Tim's business is, which is the special inspections and monitoring. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself and
Okay,
the company.
so I work for Vibra Analysis. We've been in business since 1986. The president of the company, Linda Soquette, we're a WBE firm. We perform all types of construction monitoring, pre-construction photo surveys, concrete testing, special inspections, commissioning.
The whole gamut.
Also, now the new thing is we're getting into geotechnical boring. So we're actually working with the geotech engineers, doing the drillings for all the pre-construction design stuff. So we got our hands in pretty much everything at this point.
Yeah, so one of the things that really intrigued me to have you on the show is pre-construction and vibration monitoring. And I was at the New York City Expo this year, and I was amazed at how many booths were there with not firms like yours that were doing the monitoring, but how many people were trying to sell monitoring. The devices, the drones, the pre-construction. So, a lot of, going and meeting with architects and dealing with our contractors, a big to-do these days is, hey, you cracked my wall. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. So kind of take us through the process right now about, as the building comes down, we have an empty site, and now we're ready to start our foundation. We're going to do some underpinning, and all of a sudden you get a call from a developer who says, hey, Tim, I need pre-construction photos. I need this. I need you to do whatever the code says about monitoring. But also, just as important is, I got to make sure that I protect myself, that my adjoining property owners don't end up in litigation with me. So take us through that process.
Yeah, that process, believe it or not, needs to start 8-10 months before you guys are even thinking about breaking ground. The big thing that comes into play are these access agreements. You have this unruly neighbor who doesn't want to give you access. If something like that comes in your plate, you got to engage a law firm right away. There's like an 881 law that comes into play where you can bring it to court, and basically the court will grant you access to get into these buildings because, the pre-construction photo survey is like your number one protection against any potential liability that could arise during construction. And, a lot of developers are uneducated.
So you get out of the he said, she said thing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, in New York City these days, what comes with construction lawsuits from the neighbors? So, you're only as good as your pre-con photo survey. So you want to make sure you engage a firm that actually knows what they're doing, and they are not just taking a photo of the front wall of the building, etc. Everything with pre-construction photo is everything within the influence line of construction. So say your south property, there's a 6-story building there, and you're going to be drilling SOE piles, etc. Your pre-construction photo survey has to include the adjacent entire wall to that property site.
On both sides.
On both sides. Inside and out. Because what happens is, the owner calls you, they engage a firm, they call them to deal with, and they don't even look at that report.
Right.
And, comes to show that, the property manager that doesn't work with you, they don't like you, you know what I mean?
Whatever.
They don't give you access to some of these places. And if it's not properly identified and you can't make sure that you get back there, you are now liable for that area. You couldn't get a photo there. And then some of these firms, they don't go above and beyond to say, hey, we missed a major part of this building, we need to come back. They just send a report, and then because now you need it to pull your SOE permit.
Right.
The developers, we finally got this, we can pull a permit. I don't know about that. You need to submit that one to the DOB, pull your permit, but make sure you have all your I's dotted and T's crossed.
Right.
Because you'll wind up in a lawsuit very, very quickly.
Right. So now we get past the pre-construction. We took, you do your reporting, you do your photos, And, from back in the day till now, and I say back in the day because I've been in this business for a long time, right? We have a lot more safety stuff built into the code.
Oh, yeah.
And especially with monitoring. Back in the day, I don't remember the amount. Now you need a lot of monitoring.
Oh yeah. It starts out to summarize monitoring, it all revolves around what we call the construction monitoring plan. And that's going to tell you where the equipment needs to be on each adjacent property, what the thresholds are for exceedances, et cetera, and then what type of equipment is spec'd out, and then the thresholds that need to be maintained, et cetera.
So now, is that all the way through the entire project?
No. So what it is so when, pre-demolition to when you top off your first floor. So when all of your foundation work is done and then your first floor slab is poured and all the walls are backfilled, 99% of the time you could stop doing the construction monitoring.
Oh, wow. Okay. So even though they might be erecting steel or whatever, once they get to the first floor, it kind of ends because that's where the biggest liability is.
Only when, some MTA projects, when you have a crane, et cetera, and you're pushing lateral pressure onto their thing, they're going to require those monitors to stay out. But in your typical non-MTA situation, it's just adjacent properties, standard operating procedure.
When you do take us through, because one of my next guests is from Stantec.
Oh, we're doing quite a few work with. We just wrapped up the Long Island Railroad with them.
And he is he does a lot of the MTA work. That's their specialty. So when you're doing your monitoring, you actually go into the tunnels.
Oh yeah. So what happens is the owner has to set up a date with the MTA to do the install. Usually it's at night. So we have 1 8-hour shift to get everything installed. So what we have to do is a baseline survey of the optical monitoring points that are set forth on the monitoring plan. Right. And then we have to install all of the vibration monitors in the tunnel.
And now how do they set those devices?
Typically, so the MTA has a specific standard language on how you do it. Use a 3/8-inch rod, drill it in with a little epoxy, then you run the wires. And basically, you run these wires up to a station up top so that somebody from my company will be watching the vibration readings as the SOE and foundation work
as they're doing
progresses.
So once that vibration hits a certain number,
stop. And then the design applicant comes in and they chime in, oh, is this, because a lot of times we get what's called noise. And that's basically like interference from subways flying by, people walking by the monitors, rats are a big one, like any type of vermin, they bite through the cables. You got to be really careful. Then, laborers just walk by and kick them sometimes too. So you always throw that into play. But yeah, no, it's a big process. And, the MTA, believe it or not, this has been going on way before my time. So it's not like we're reinventing the wheel. There are some specialty situations where we get involved where we're doing lateral pressures on different structures, et cetera. That monitoring's a little more, they call that instrumentation, not monitoring technically.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
it's a different type.
Yeah, we look at it, the vibration, crack, optical, that's typical standard stuff. But there's all different types of ground deformation monitoring, rail monitoring, et cetera, where, only the high-end firms could really handle it. That's where we specialize in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, we're all across the country. We're working on, we do dam projects. Our big one we just wrapped up was the 3TC third track expansion with the guys from Stantec. They would do it at Halmar. We just did that. That was like 4 miles of track monitoring. Oh, yeah, it was a big one for us.
Oh, I never even knew that your firm did that.
Oh, yeah, air monitoring, you name it. There's a lot of aspects of monitoring.
So now on the special inspection side, right? You talked about doing concrete testing and all of that. So how did the overlap happen?
So it's a funny story. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was working for another firm, and we were using Vibra Analysis as one of our subs to do the MTA monitoring. I hit it off with the owner's son. And, one day we just merged together and we haven't looked back since.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. No, we've done well. Thank goodness.
So what changes has the building department given you guys recently? Like what's fun and exciting that you could share? That like, hey, before we used to put five monitors in, now we're up to 30 monitors because they excuse me, that they're concerned with this type of failure or things of that nature.
Specifically for the vibration monitoring, the code is really ambiguous. You go to chapter 33, it doesn't really give you a clear defined number, spacing, intervals, etc.
It doesn't.
What they do is they put it on the SOE design applicant and they spec out there. So
depending on how difficult that process is, they ask for more or less.
Correct. And also, how far are you in the influence line of construction? So that's a big one. Like there's times where, we could have a landmark property 25 feet behind us, but we have an open cut excavation, so we don't have to monitor it. So everyone is a little different. In terms of the MTA, that's been clear cut. It's every 25 feet you need a vibration monitor.
Because they set that standard.
They set that up way before I was born.
It's outside the building department jurisdiction.
Oh yeah, no, building department has nothing to do with that.
Nothing to do with it. So that's very interesting. So when we see these SOE plans and you're going to underpin a 70-foot wall, the actual design applicant indicates how many monitors.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I thought the building department just basically said, hey, if you're doing an underpinning, you have to put one every 8 feet or one every 10 feet.
Good point you brought up now. Last year, the building department has changed the requirements of doing the pre-construction photo surveys of a building being underpinned. That's a huge topic that's coming up because this is not just walking around taking some photos of some potential areas of risk. This is actually getting involved with the design applicants pre-construction. And, one of the requirements is you have to do test pits and borings of the soil.
Sure.
But there's a way around that. You could use the geotax test pits and boring data and, ask them to provide, and then you could include it in your report. But I've been seeing them get knocked down recently from other firms who aren't 100% up to aware of these new requirements, and then they call us at the 11th hour coming in, and then we got to scramble because you actually have to do a structural integrity assessment of the building.
Oh, wow.
Which, there's huge liability there. And, so what does that mean? The cost of doing a construction monitoring survey of underpinning quadrupled. Maybe 5x.
Because you're taking on all the for an existing structure.
And a lot. The bigger firms, your Langens, your Musers, those type of geotechs, they're staying away from it, which means there's a lot of liability behind it.
Sure.
So
we do a lot of work with both those firms.
Oh yeah, they're the best. Muser and Langen, they're top notch on the geo. So I work with both of them a lot. So like going back to it, the code is super ambiguous. It all falls onto the geotax and their parameters. Lately they have now been including the monitoring plan in their drawings, where in the past they would just give us a specification or there'd be some notes on the drawings and then we'd produce the monitoring plan.
So they're taking it on.
They realize there's a couple grand extra in it for them if they do that themselves.
And plus you're always going back to them anyway.
They have to. So we submit. Yeah, exactly. So we do if they didn't do it originally, we prepare it, send it to them for review.
Like a shop drawing.
Submit, same exact thing. Then once they give us the go ahead, we stamp it, and then that goes into the trailer. It doesn't get filed with the DOB though.
But it's part of the process.
Oh, it's major. If you don't have a monitoring plan when the DOB walks on the stuff, you're done.
So take the audience through that. So you're monitoring, right?
Yeah. So
do you just 1 second. You have one of your staff members there every single day. Do they do it remotely or they do it on site?
So if it's MTA, the MTA requires a man monitor to be able to monitor those instantaneous.
So they're on site?
They're on site. Whenever anytime there's work going on, we're there full time. For the, adjacent properties in your typical private development, everything is remote. So what we have is each machine has a modem hooked up to it, and then it goes into our central platform reporting software.
And then you guys set...
Yeah, if you walk into our office, there's guys with 9 screens in front of them, and they're just watching everything. And then every morning we have to do a sensor check.
Are there alarms that you set?
Oh, yeah. So we have, we've probably been doing this longer than anybody. CM platform is a little more advanced, I think, because we've custom built this over the years through growing pains and learning from mistakes, etc.
That was really your business. It wasn't doing other things.
Correct. That was our primary thing. So yeah, no, when we start a job with you, you give us an alert list, and either you give us the person's cell phone or their email. And once a threshold is exceeded, you get an instantaneous alert on your phone, etc.
That's amazing.
Believe it or not, the developers hate it because they don't realize how many emails you could get in one day. Because you know what I mean. Because
if they're pounding next to side, and obviously there's a safety factor in there. You're not setting it right at the point. You're saying it way before. You're not waiting for it to happen. I get phone
calls like from some bigger developers. They're like, get me off of this list right now. They said, call me when it's something important. We go, okay, you wanted it. So you know what I mean? But it could drive you nuts. I've had a couple of them where we were monitoring, 11, 12 buildings at a time.
Oh, and then
every time
they move one piece of equipment, it rattles a little bit.
Car drives by too fast, you know what I mean?
Or big heavy trucks on the street. I mean, could be anything.
It will drive you nuts. Thank God.
But that's so it's basically having a home base with a whole bunch of screens.
Yeah.
So for the TA, you have people there full time. But in reality, it's not. What you are monitoring is monitored by a person through.
So we were talking about at our office, we have the main central base that everybody's looking at these monitors, watching the readings. We do that in the field for the MTA. And then the MTA inspector stands over our shoulder.
So they have their own.
Yeah, well, we've been doing this pretty much. So we have the relationships with them. But yeah,
so it's two. I mean, their concern is so deep that there's actually two people monitoring.
And the owner's got to put money in an escrow account for the MTA to just eat at it. It's big revenue gainer for them. They want you to do construction near their sites.
Well, they want you to do safe construction.
Oh, safe construction, always, yeah.
So clearly a big part of our show is talking about, what a great job the city does. After every, unfortunate situation, new laws come in, different things come in. That's what's created your business. That's what's created, a lot of businesses in New York. So as we look at the monitoring, it had to evolve, right? We touched on that a little bit before. And I think that the city's done a really great job with it. TA has done also. Thank God, we don't really ever hear about any kind of tunnel collapses and things like that.
Yeah,
there's very few accidents there. And kudos to the building department and MTA for putting all these safety requirements in and protecting the people building the buildings, protecting the people that are in the subway while we're building the buildings, protecting the people on the sidewalks, protecting the people that are living in the building next door.
These protocols set forth, who knows how many lives they saved because, that building, if nobody was monitoring it, could have had a collapse because we're undermining it, et cetera.
And we have statistics that show when they don't follow the laws and do it on their own. You don't want to be on the naughty list. We have collapses, not only in New York City, but around around the country.
Florida, it's a major one.
And it's not only new stuff, it's also, I think over time, a big thing that may come into play is that they're going to require, just like on the parking garages, structural integrity of buildings that over a certain, buildings have evolved. We talk about
come
garages.
Back to local law 11s, all these facade inspections. Oh yeah, it's coming, 100%. It's only a matter of time.
Is a big problem. You know what? We were talking about it with a client a few weeks ago, and we were talking about parking garages that have been around since the 50s. And they say, well, look at where a car has evolved. And what's evolved is, an electric car weighs 20% more, 15% more.
Does it really? No way. The battery. I didn't know that.
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah. So
that's
now
very interesting.
They're starting to look and go back and look
your
at
original
what the
number,
Right. Not only that, they got all these vans now.
Oh yeah.
Right. And the greener we're getting, the heavier the vehicles are going to be. So right now, for every electric car, you got whatever the percentage is. But in 10 to 12 years from now,
that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Are these structures going to be able to handle that additional weight?
I'll tell you one thing: if the building's post tensioned with the cables, it won't be able to.
Right. Well, and again,
then you got to really start getting smart on how you're going to correct that,
and how
because
many
you
of
can't
them
cut a
have
cable.
rotted rebar, and how many?
Have you seen them? Oh, I've seen ones where the design applicant, as a special inspector, they're obviously not boots on the ground. They have us measuring the rebar for corrosion and stuff like that, and calling out, okay, this rebar is past the allowable tolerance.
Right, because it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it was a number. It was
now
a half
down to an 8.
Yeah, maybe even a 6 at 16th, and that's definitely a big one. The parking garages is a whole nother animal. That's more of a specialty thing where and a lot of liability. We try to stay away from that. We want the big high-rise buildings, etc.
But everybody has a niche.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at some point, the structural integrity of a lot of structures, we talked about pre-construction. We talked about, now they're saying, hey, look, we had these collapses. They put a law into effect, and the collapse happened after the law came into place. So, it's very sad, that these things do occur. But, these buildings need revenue to keep them up.
Yeah.
They don't have an infinite lifespan.
No.
Every product has a finite amount of time that it could last. So as we go forward, what do you think is the new major technology that's going to come out in the next few years related to monitoring and pre-construction? I know they talk about these drone videos to do pre-construction where they can literally fly up to a building, look at the facade and look at a joint within like a foot, where before we used to have to put a scaffold up and guys would be on scaffold. The whole technology thing in inspecting is starting to come about.
No, definitely good question. At the end of the day, you could come in with any new technology you want, but is it cost feasible or not? That's a big thing. Are the owners going to want to pay for it? We have drones to do bridge inspections, stuff like that, but do the property owners or the government agencies, do they want to technically open up a can of worms to 100%? Like, if we're coming in doing drone surveys with infrared cameras determining corrosion factors, they might not like the data that comes out at it. And, just like you said, there needs to be funding for it and stuff like that. Could there be a big leap in technology? The drones would definitely...
I do see a lot, at a lot of the shows that I've been going to, I always look at product. The product is always... incredible to me. Like I said, I was at the show and I saw a lot of people all trying to sell different monitoring devices, right? Because it's a whole system. Like you said, it's not just the device, it's the software.
Absolutely.
It's not just the hardware, but it's the software as well. And the money's in the software. And there was a lot of firms, selling the concept of the drone facade inspection, the drone monitoring, that instead of doing this, we could do it with a drone, and we don't have to be on site. We could do it from somewhere else. So they're using the drone, as a mechanism. Like I said, comparing to putting a scaffold up and having guys hang off a scaffold to do something, they can just next day get there.
Without
fly
a
it
doubt.
up, look at something and say, hey, we got a problem right here. Stop this. It's very interesting to me that there's this new market coming out. Related to inspecting with
we probably have 5 or 6 guys that have their FAA drone licenses, but to be honest with you, we haven't got much traction on it. I'd really say, in terms of when you're talking these local law 11 facade repairs,
right, that's different.
That's a whole nother story.
And I think that's who they're marketing.
That is a huge asset to the company doing it, because like I said, how are you going to, at the end of the day, the engineers signing off that work, are they actually inspecting 100% of it? Probably not, but with that drone, they definitely can. And there's video backup to go along with it in case there's a big, oh man, we got a crack in this lintel and our terracotta panels coming off. We can see the eye hook slanting out.
Especially now with the infrared, you could see.
It's a major thing. But maybe we're just not getting the phone calls on that. In terms of the monitoring, you only go for every 10 feet down, you only got to go 10 feet up technically. Right. So there are some buildings
there's some buildings in Manhattan, those holes are pretty deep.
80, 90 feet. That's the furthest we went down. So you figure, good rule of thumb is if you're going 90 feet down, you're going 90 feet up.
To monitor.
With the facades, yeah. Oh, yeah. And you'll never, you need a drone for that. without a doubt.
Yeah.
100%. We have super high definition cameras where you could actually zoom in, 60, 70 feet below and get a good shot, but it will never be as accurate as one of these drones. It's definitely a cool thing.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a place for it in more and more of the technology.
Oh yeah,
I mean, even when you're on and you're surfing the internet and you're looking at projects, there's a lot of videos of them flying around the drones.
Oh yeah, that's a new, like, we're doing a high rise up in New Rochelle, and it's just like every day they fly their drone over and show how yeah, it's cool. It's definitely cool.
Yeah, and progress.
Yeah, progress. Yeah, at the end they'll have.
If you had, we always kind of get to the end of the show, Tim, and I ask all the guests, and I put them on the spot.
I like it.
It's kind of what I do, and I always quote the same guy. His name's Andrew Peters.
Okay.
He is a estimator.
Okay.
Who does budgets for, hey, we want to build this. What's it going to cost?
Feasibility, right? Like a feasibility type thing.
And that's what he does for a living. And he's actually very, very good at it. And he has a great saying that I always use in the show, which is, everyone who wants to look in the rearview mirror, he goes, in my business, I have to look forward. And I have to guess, or I have to come up with a really good, accurate estimate of what I think this will cost in a year or two or three.
Oh man, talk to the COVID boys about this one.
Yeah, so it's a toughie.
But I like it.
But I use that concept in asking the guests, being a guest on the show, a prediction of where you think vibration analysis will be a year from now. Where do you see the path for it? Because this is something that you do, and I think that a lot of the developers who watch our show or are in the construction industry value your expertise of what you think the vision is for it.
Yeah.
So give me a little bit about where you think it's going to go in the next year to two.
Next year to 2 years. See, I want to say in about 2009, New York City did a strict crackdown on special inspection agencies, concrete testing labs, where everybody had to get accredited. Class 1, Class 2 came into effect.
They created...
Listen, any person that went through that accreditation process with one of the IAS, major value.
100%.
Major value.
Everyone I've ever spoken to said
one
it was
of the
a
best
great
things.
experience.
It just made us better.
Well, and now they can monitor who's doing it versus it being, the Wild West.
See, exactly, you hit it on the head. I look at pre-2009, I call it the Wild West. Anybody ever told us things are a lot different then? I actually see for the vibration monitoring companies, I think they're eventually going to have to go into an accreditation process to determine what type of project they could work on. And see, right now, there's enough business for everybody, but vibration monitoring is maybe one of the most saturated businesses.
So whether you're doing an 80-story building or you're doing a 6-story building,
you could do
as long as you're registered to do...
There is no registration.
Oh, because it's not a special inspection?
There's nothing.
Oh, there's nothing.
So, there's a lot of small firms.
I thought it was a requirement. No. So as long as you're a PE, you can do it?
Yeah. Well, see, believe it or not, that's actually a gray area. If you going back to the code being super ambiguous, it doesn't specify that it says a PE with 5 years of relevant experience can sign off on an optical monitoring report, et cetera. But who's
about writing the report?
But who's verifying that? Where I could see something like this coming down the road because New York City Department buildings is very smart.
Yeah, I can't believe that's not a required controlled inspection.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, I think eventually.
It might be sooner than later.
It could be a special inspection.
And then because what happens is, you have these engineering firms and they're like, vibration monitor looks like a very profitable thing, especially as a secondary service.
Sure.
But they don't even realize technically what they're getting themselves into.
Well, of course,
you know what I mean?
It's another business, and
you're taking an enormous amount of liability, whether you realize it or not.
Of course. Well, that's why they have special inspections, is for someone else to be the expert for them to be there on a daily basis or as needed based on the code, and for someone to make sure that things are getting done in the proper way.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, I think that's great, because if they can't hire the employees to do it, they need to give it to someone else. Firms like yourself.
No, that's what I'm saying. To get a Class 1 Special Inspection Agency accreditation, it's a grueling process.
Well,
without a doubt.
Kudos to the building department.
Oh,
for that.
yeah, no. They got the right formula going for that. But I'm telling you, next up is vibration monitoring and stuff like that.
Well, that's Tim's prediction. Well, Tim, thank you
Sisto,
so much
pleasure
for coming
for having
on.
us.
It was great.